Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, I did a flash video yesterday afternoon regarding the lack of appointments available for GPs. This is a marvellous wheeze that the SNP have come up with in order to reduce waiting lists. They're simply not putting people onto them. If you can't see a doctor, then you don't count. You don't exist if you're not on the waiting list, and that is why they're doing this. So you phone up and they're saying, no, there's no one available. And they're not giving you an appointment. That's crazy. People are going to die. And all because Michael Matheson can't do his job. Too busy worrying about the contents of his iPad and the forthcoming breakup of his marriage, perhaps. Especially after he throws his children under the bus. I'm sure his wife won't be liking that very much. And so we'll have a look at this to see what is going on and why this failure must resign, and why someone must come in and take control of a situation that is spiralling out of control while nobody is at the helm of this department. Here goes. So, Scott's patients could be refused doctor's appointments after vetting as SNP try to cut waiting list. And of course their way of cutting the waiting list, as I say, is to not put anyone onto it. Eventually, of course, they will work their way through the existing list. Meanwhile, people will be in agony, will be in pain, will be deeply worried. People will undoubtedly die as they're waiting to see a GP. It's not a good way of running a health service, is it? Anyway, the Scottish Government has struggled to get to grips with record-long waiting times, and new guidance is asking doctors to do enhanced vetting in order to stop patients getting to hospital. Yeah, that's going to work, isn't it? Because if people go to the doctors and the doctor won't see them, they're just going to go straight to the hospital anyway. Are these people really as moronically stupid as we think they are? In his case, yes. Scott's patients could be refused hospital appointments as the SNP tried to cut down on NHS waiting lists, which have soared underneath the nationalist government. The new shock guidance means that even if a GP wants you to see a doctor, then you could still fail to do so, simply because there is no effective NHS in Scotland anymore. Because obviously they need to spend the money on independence brochures and on foreign embassies, rather than, hiring a doctor. Senior medics will review referrals for appointments and have the power to remove you from the waiting list if they deem it to be unnecessary. Instead, you'll receive self-help leaflets and told to return if the problem persists. Well, what's the point of that? You're not treating anyone. The problem will persist and they'll be back on the list eventually. To be what? Thrown off the list again? You're going to die. People are undoubtedly going to die because they'd rather spend money on glossy brochures than on people's health. That shows the priorities for this failing government, doesn't it? The new guidance is aimed at bringing down Scotland's massive wait times to see a doctor, with more than 1 in 7 Scots currently stuck in pain and in need of help. That isn't going to get better when you've got a man who basically can't do his job in charge of the NHS. A man who is happy to be part of a regime wasting money on a million things rather than where the money needs to be spent on people. Over 830,000 people are waiting, which is a record high and only expected to get worse during the winter months. That total includes more than 525,000 people waiting for an outpatient appointment, with this figure more than doubling since the start of the COVID pandemic. Labelled enhanced vetting, this will take place before a patient is even seen by a specialist. And so things will be missed. And so that little niggle that you think is just a little niggle, and that, that some doctor without seeing you'll just put down, I'll just come back and see you 3 months ago, here's some cream, off you go, could end up being stage 4 cancer. And because Michael Matheson can't do his job, you're going to die. That is where you're at. Simply, and there's no other way of putting it. Under the SNP, people are dying because they'd rather spend money on independence than on healthcare. Ask yourself this as you're looking at your family members around you, and ask, which of these people around me is going to die for the sake of independence? And if you are an SNP voter, ask yourself this: is this pointless pursuit of a non-achievable independence worth the life of your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband? is it worth it? And I think you've got to say, even as an SNP supporter, no. You'd rather your family members could see a doctor than some ghostly chase for something that will not happen. Anyway, the Daily Mail says that the guidance outlines a system known as active clinical referral triage, which is already underway in some specialities. It states ACRT is the process whereby, following a new outpatient referral into secondary care, a senior clinician reviews the patient's record and carries out enhanced vetting to place the patient on the most appropriate pathway. If you don't see that patient, you don't know. Because, let's face it, we are not medical people. I mean, some of us will have some medical knowledge. We've treated people, we're aware or something like that. But we're not experts. We're not clinicians. And so what we say is, well, I've got this thing here. You know, we're not telling him what it actually is. We're telling them what we think it is. Not the same thing. And unless you're actually seen by an expert, you're going to miss something which could be absolutely a death sentence because you've missed it, or because you've put it down as one thing and it's actually something else, and it's going to end up killing people. This not seeing patients needs to stop. Every patient deserves to be seen. They say in broad terms, the outcomes include being removed from the list, either with or without the option to opt in at a later date, or to remain on the list and waiting for an appointment. It means that when a GP or other NHS professional refers a patient to a hospital for treatment, a senior doctor will look at the case and their medical records and decide whether a face-to-face appointment is clinically necessary. I would suggest it's always necessary to be seen, to be physically present and examined. And if at that point there's nothing wrong, you say thank you, move on, off you go. However, it's at that point when the important things do tend to get picked up. Anyway, some ear, nose and throat departments have already started this triage system with patients for conditions such as ear pain, nosebleeds and sinus problems. Opposition critics, of which I am one, have blasted the SNP for its failure to get to grips with the growing waiting list. And a problem, of course, that's going to grow over the next few months as we move into the winter period, and the pressure on beds increases because, and I'm not picking on elderly people, but when a young man breaks his leg, okay, they can plaster him up and send him home. If an old person falls over and breaks a leg, it is far more serious and it does require hospital treatment. Simply because of age and the healing process, but also the fact that various things get out and into the bloodstream and it's a lot harder to treat. We all know this. You know, when Granny falls and breaks her hip, it's usually a death sentence. Scottish Labour Health spokesman Dame Jackie Bailey said, this latest update to guidance shows just how desperate things have become in Scotland's NHS, with more than 1 in 7 Scots currently on waiting lists. I know for a fact there's people there on 2 waiting lists. They're on a waiting list for that speciality and on a waiting list for that speciality. God, it's hard, isn't it? Anyway, she said this is a serious warning about the state of Scotland's NHS, and the SNP must stop looking for ways to spin this crisis and get to work in setting out a realistic catch-up plan for bringing down waiting lists. I'm not going to go through it, we're at the end there. One of the plans they did have, one of the options they had, was that people at the top end of the waiting list, the ones who've been waiting the absolute longest, could be shipped down into England to receive specialist examination or care, whatever it will be, treatment, outpatients, operations, whatever, to help ease that backlog. That was an option. But because this man, Mr. the fondler, Mr. iPad porn, we don't know what is on there, but probably something disgusting, he said no. Because he says that if patients in Scotland are sent to England, it will show that NHS Scotland is failing and it will make him look bad. Michael, I've got news for you, mate. You already look bad. There is nothing you can do to make yourself worse. But by denying patients treatment in England makes you evil. And Scotland isn't going to get better. That waiting list isn't going to get better until you pull your thumb out of your arse and do your job, or resign and put someone else in who is in some way capable of doing their job. I'm coming up. Day by day, it becomes increasingly clear that Matheson must resign. Apart from all the things he's done, or all the things we suspect him of doing, the one thing he's not doing is his damn job. The waiting list grows every day. People are dying every day. An estimated 25,000 people have died on the waiting list, while this man barely turns up for work, and when he does turn up, he does a piss poor job, and he's got no solutions. The one solution presented to him to help, to send people to England, he failed to take because it made him look personally like an inadequate wanker. Well, far too late for that. Times must change, and so must he. He must be fired, and he must be fired quickly, and someone else embedded really quickly to try and do something about basically the forthcoming medical emergency that's hitting Scotland, and which will see thousands more die before this winter is out. Thank you very much for listening. Been a bit of a serious one to start the day. I normally like a light one, but this I felt was important. So do please hit the subscribe button. Really push the channel along. We are doing ever so well recently, and I have to thank each and every one of you for that. But until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay out of hospital, and goodbye.